Hey there, it's Chris from Good Roads. Today I wanted to share a project with you guys that I've been working on for a while. My wife and I bought our house about a year and a half ago, and since then life has been a bit of an overwhelmingly busy roller coaster. But getting a house in the mountains has been a dream of mine for a long time, and part of that dream has always been a backyard trail system so that I could get out and ride whenever conditions allowed. So, last fall, when things finally settled down enough for side projects, I grabbed my trail building tools and walked off into the woods. Before starting, I had spent a lot of time walking the property and wrapping my head around the lay of the land. I paid attention to the slopes, looked for natural gaps between trees, and decided which parts were too pretty to mess with and which areas were kosher to run trails through. Instead of rushing into cutting and clearing, I slowly built up a deeper understanding of the property. My hope is that this will allow me to build trails that integrate naturally into the landscape and that maintain the beauty of the forest. In my exploration, I was lucky enough to find a relatively open, wide path that, with a bit of effort, could connect a clear area towards the top of the property all the way down to a clear area on the bottom. This would give me a nice, mellow, easy trail to start with, and a good starting place to grow the rest of the trail system from. The first step was to rake up all of the leaf litter and clear myself out a space to work. This allows me to see the actual shape of the trail surface, reveals any underbrush that needs to be trimmed back, and exposes any debris that needs to be moved. While I didn't have to cut down any trees to clear this trail, there were a few dead ones that had fallen in the way. Some, like this moss-covered beauty, add so much character that I wanted to make sure to keep them around. So I cut them into segments that were small enough for me to move and used them to line the trail edge. There was also some underbrush that needed to go. These honeysuckle bushes are everywhere on our property, and they're non-native, so I don't feel too bad about removing a few of them. If the undercover ever starts to feel sparse, I can always fill it back in later with something native and something more intentional. Next, I wanted to clear out all the raspberry and blackberry shoots, grasses, and other brush on the forest floor. That meant using one of my favorite tools, a weed whip. And finally, I wanted to bring in my one piece of heavy grooming equipment to cut back all the underbrush even farther and to start to pack in the soil. But it was at that moment that the snow started to fall. The trail wasn't done, but it was time to put down the tools for the winter. I'd have to wait for warmer weather without snow cover to continue working. Fast forward through the winter months and an enjoyable snowboard season, and it was time to break out the tools and pick up where I left off. I had to rake the last stretch of trail, and trim a dense stand of little brush seedlings. But once that was done, we had a clear run from about 2/3 of the way up the property all the way down to the bottom, and it was time to get some laps in. But was I going to have to wait till next year and snow to finally get riding? Nope, I've got it covered. The trail is still a bit wet and soft, so the ride is a little slow, but I finally have a place where I can go mountainboard or snowboard right out my back door. And as long as the weather cooperates, I should be able to get some riding in even on the most busy days. The new trail is rideable, and while there's still a lot of work I want to do before I can call it done, every good trail deserves a name. Earlier in the day, before I started riding, I had one final task to take care of. This cute little tree was growing right in the middle of the run. I didn't want to cut it down, so I decided to transplant it to another area of the property. A little water from the creek, and it should be good to go as it starts to get established in its new home. And even though that little tree had to get moved, it was one of the more unique and memorable parts of clearing this trail. So what better name for a nice mellow green run? Little Pine, the first of many trails here in the woods. Oh, that makes me so happy.